My parents backed my brother's $40,000 debt, then tried to get into my bank account. My own parents defended my brother's $440,000 debt, tried to steal from my bank account, and then called me selfish for saying no. But what happened next? What I uncovered was a level of betrayal that shook my entire world. I've been watching from the sidelines here for a while, but until now, I never felt the need to share anything. I'm 35, and I desperately need some perspective because my family has finally pushed me beyond my breaking point. No matter what I do, I'm always painted as the villain. This endless family drama has utterly exhausted me, mentally and emotionally. I built my career from nothing, now a middle manager at a major Silicon Valley software company. Every penny in my house, my car, they're all a testament to countless sleepless nights and relentless hard work. You wouldn't believe the toxic family dynamics I had to escape to get here. Let me give you some background. Since I turned 18, I've been entirely self-sufficient, financially, emotionally, intellectually. My parents' approach to raising my brother and me was, to put it mildly, deeply problematic. We looked like the perfect American family in our middle-class suburban home outside Boston. Good neighborhood, good schools, my mom taught part-time, my dad worked in insurance. But beneath that flawless surface, there was an unspoken rule that defined my entire childhood. I was the responsible one, the example, the one who always had to lead. My younger brother, Jason, who's 27, could do no wrong. The unfairness was brutally clear from a young age. I still remember when Jason was 8 and I was 16. I got a B+ on a single chemistry test, and my parents grounded me for a month, claiming I was wasting my potential. That very same month, Jason was caught stealing money from our dad's wallet for the third time. Their reaction? He was just going through a phase. This wasn't an isolated incident. Every single time Jason messed up, and believe me, he messed up a lot, it was brushed aside. He'll learn eventually, my mother would say with a dismissive wave of her hand, or he's just sensitive, which was code for, let's pretend this never happened and hope he figures it out. But if I even stumbled, it felt like the sky was falling. The pressure was relentless, crushing. Why aren't you trying harder? You need to set a better example for your brother. Don't you know he looks up to you? I worked part-time at a coffee shop, volunteered at the library, took every AP class, and fought to keep my GPA perfect for universities. Jason, meanwhile, rarely went to class, spending most of his time in the basement playing video games. Yet, I was always the one who somehow needed to try harder. No matter what I achieved, it was never enough. If I brought home straight A's, they'd ask why I didn't get an A+ in calculus instead of praising me. When I was chosen valedictorian, my mother's first reaction was, I hope this doesn't make your brother feel bad about his grades. This continued into adulthood. Jason struggled through classes, and everyone would say, at least you're doing your best, sweetie. Not everyone is cut out for academics. The stakes just kept getting higher. Jason dropped out of community college after one semester because it was too stressful. My parents paid his rent for a gap year that stretched into 5 years of him finding himself. I, on the other hand, worked 2 part-time jobs, coffee in the mornings, waiting tables at night, just to pay for state college. I vividly remember the night I moved out at 18. I'd saved enough from my jobs to rent a small studio with a roommate. When I told my dad I was leaving, he simply said, well, you'll need to start paying rent if you're staying here anyway. But they never asked Jason for a dime when he was still living at home at 25 because job hunting was emotionally draining for him. They even gave him an allowance. They never once offered to cover my living expenses or tuition. I didn't expect them to, but it still hurt to see them go above and beyond for Jason while I was completely on my own, racking up student debt and eating more ramen dinners than I care to recall. Jason, meanwhile, continued his cycle of failing jobs, always finding someone else to blame. The manager had it out for me, or the company's toxic culture wasn't a good fit. He never took responsibility, and our parents enabled him every step of the way. I graduated college with honors, secured an entry-level job in software, and climbed the ladder through sheer grit, overtime, and continuous learning. My parents never helped, and I never asked. Yet, they had no problem asking me for money every time Jason needed a little help to get back on his feet. Fast forward to last week. The fact that my mother even called was remarkable in itself. You see, my mom doesn't call to chat. She never calls to say hello, check in, or ask about my life. She calls when she needs something. And these calls always start with excessively pleasant small talk, a transparent attempt to butter me up before the real reason for the call emerges. That's exactly what happened. How's work? Are you still at that tech company? Have you been eating well? She chirped. It was so out of character I immediately knew something was terribly wrong. My mother couldn't care less about my diet. The only thing she knows about my job is that I do something with computers, and she couldn't even recall the name of my company when we last spoke at Thanksgiving, 3 months earlier, even though I'd been there for 5 years. She was trying too hard to sound casual, and the whole conversation felt forced. She asked about my boyfriend. I've been single since my engagement ended last year, another story where Jason played a significant role, and my apartment, though I've owned a house for 2 years. She even asked about my cat, which I've never had due to allergies. Each question felt like a tiny paper cut, a reminder of how little she truly knew or cared about my life. Then she dropped the bombshell. Jason was in trouble again. I wasn't surprised. Jason is always in trouble. But I didn't anticipate this. He had somehow accumulated $400,000 in debt. Not the kind of debt you can dismiss as youthful folly. No credit cards, no student loans. He borrowed from some very dubious individuals, and now they were seriously demanding their money back. My mother's voice broke as if she were about to cry, a tactic she'd used successfully countless times before. She immediately piled on the guilt. You've done so well for yourself. You've always been the strong one. Jason's not like you. He needs your help. He's sensitive. You know how he gets under pressure. I sat in my home office, trying to process her words, looking out the window at the neighborhood I had worked so hard to afford. $400,000. How could anyone possibly accumulate that much debt? When I asked her how it happened, half anticipating some ludicrous explanation about a botched business venture or a scam he'd fallen for, my mom dismissed it with the same contemptuous tone that always made my stomach churn, as if swatting away a bothersome fly. That doesn't matter right now. What matters is that he's your brother. Family helps family. We've always taught you that family comes first. For years, family helps family had been their go-to excuse. They used it when they asked me to lend Jason money for his revolutionary cryptocurrency investment, which he lost all of in 2 weeks. They said it after his girlfriend threw him out and he took my credit card information. Every single time they needed me to cover for Jason, fix his messes, or clean up after him, they invoked that phrase. And each time, I swallowed my annoyance and did what they asked. I didn't want to be the villain. Deep down, that little girl still yearned for her parents' approval, hoping that perhaps this time they would finally recognize my help, my sacrifice, my constant rescuing of their beloved boy. But $400,000. This wasn't just a favor or a loan. That was a down payment on a house. That was a year of my grueling labor. That was my safety net, my emergency reserve, my security for the future. This time I couldn't do it. For the first time in my life, I told her no. I apologized, but I told her I was powerless to save Jason from the disaster he had created. The conversation's tone shifted dramatically in roughly 2 seconds. My mother transformed from pathetic to enraged. Had it not been so horrifying, the metamorphosis would have been almost remarkable. Her gentle, worried voice vanished, replaced by an icy, piercing scream. "You're being selfish!" she shrieked, her voice growing louder. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us. You're abandoning your family when they need you most." Then came the nuclear option. Do you want his blood on your hands? He borrowed from some nasty folks. What if something happens to him? The manipulation was so transparent, it was almost comical. Almost. Her attempt to hold me accountable for Jason's terrible decisions, again, was not amusing. It was as if his choices, his errors, and his total lack of accountability were somehow my fault. I ended the call. I couldn't listen anymore. My chest felt constricted, as if someone were sitting on it, and my hands shook so violently I could barely press the end call button. Yet, beneath the familiar burden of familial expectations, the shame, and the fear, there was also a strange comfort, a relief. For once, I had held my ground. I had worked too hard to be dragged down by the poor decisions of others. I'd spent years building my career, becoming self-sufficient, forging a life apart from being Jason's safety net. I simply couldn't bear the thought of throwing all that away, of potentially jeopardizing my own financial stability to enable his recklessness to continue. But the problem with growing up in a dysfunctional home is that guilt creeps in almost instantly. Even when you know you're making the right decision, positive you're acting in your own best interests. My family has a way of twisting facts, making me doubt my own judgment, making me feel like the bad guy. And it was no different this time. I couldn't shake the thought that perhaps I made the wrong choice. Even though I said no, and I know it was the right one in that moment, confronting my family felt correct. But now I'm left wondering if I've made things worse. What if they're right? Could I be selfish? What if Jason does suffer because I refuse to help? The logical side of my brain understands I have no responsibility for my brother's decisions or their consequences. But a part of me, still that young child desperate for her parents' approval, keeps asking, what if? To be honest, I had no idea what would happen next. That call was only the beginning. I was totally unprepared for what transpired. I suspected this wasn't the end, especially with Jason. My parents have never been good at taking no for an answer. I'm trying to stay strong, trying to remember that I have the right to defend myself and my future. As this situation develops, I suspect I'll need more guidance. I'll provide an update shortly. First of all, I want to thank everyone who left encouraging comments on my previous post. Honestly, I didn't anticipate such a strong reaction. The past week has seen a sharp increase in tension, and not in a good way. Remember how I sensed this wasn't the end? Yes, I was right. As soon as I hung up on my mom, the harassment campaign began. Initially, it was just a flurry of text messages, the typical guilt-tripping fare. Then, however, things became considerably more sinister. My bank notified me of unusual behavior last Tuesday. Someone had tried to use what appeared to be stolen personal information to get into my account. I received a direct call from the bank's fraud department. They claimed their security system had detected a huge transfer attempt using my credentials, flagged due to a suspicious IP address. The fraud investigator told me that the person who attempted to access my account had my mother's maiden name, my social security number, and even the name of my first pet, all standard security questions. Jason would be the only one with access to all that information. Realizing that my own brother would attempt to steal from me was a gut punch. I promptly updated all my security questions and passwords, making them incredibly difficult. Money was no longer the only factor in this. This was a completely new kind of betrayal. Here's where it becomes even more bizarre, though. One of the few relatives with whom I truly get along, my Aunt Catherine, called me yesterday. It seems my parents had been giving a totally different account of what happened to everyone in the family. They had portrayed me as some cold-blooded monster, living in luxury while her brother suffers, hoarding my fortune while poor Jason was fighting for his life. My aunt called to hear my side of the story, thankfully not believing it. God bless sensible family. She was startled when I told her about the attempted bank fraud. She also disclosed information I was unaware of. It seems Jason had attempted to borrow money from multiple family members in recent months, each time claiming a different reason for his need. He told a wide range of stories. He told our old grandma he needed money for medical fees. It was for a sure-thing investment opportunity, according to our cousin Mark. It was to launch a modest business, according to our Uncle Steve. He informed our parents that he owed money to dangerous people. None of these allegations fit. But this morning was the real kicker. My dad sent me an email, which was the first time he had spoken to me directly since this whole situation began. It was icy cunning, and to be honest, a little menacing. Here's a portion of his writing. Your actions are forcing us to reconsider your position in this family. Your mother and I have always provided for you, supported your education, and given you every opportunity to succeed. Your current success is a direct result of our sacrifices. If you continue to abandon your brother in his time of need, there will be consequences. Think carefully about your next move. The part about them funding my education made me laugh out loud. My student loan payments are still ongoing. However, the warning was unmistakable: assist Jason, or risk being cut off from the family. They believe they can control me by threatening to isolate me, attempting to use familial ties as leverage. They don't seem to realize that I've been essentially cut off from them for years. We have always had a conditional relationship. I have to take care of Jason. I have to play the part they put me in. And I have to accept their perverted definition of family devotion. I've discussed the attempted account hack with the IT security team at my firm. They are assisting me with protecting all of my gadgets and accounts connected to my job. Additionally, I've begun recording every single text, email, and voicemail. Even if I find it hard to believe, I must gather proof against my own family. The most bizarre aspect of it all, Jason's girlfriend, or ex-girlfriend depending on their present situation, sent me a text. Jason has been acting strangely recently, she told me. We've never been close, but she was worried enough to contact me after hearing him make cryptic remarks about getting what's his and teaching people lessons. This weekend, I'm installing security cameras at my house. I may be too cautious, but I'm not taking any chances in the wake of the bank account disaster. I never imagined that I would need to defend myself against my own family, but I suppose that's where we are at the moment. For those who are wondering why I don't just pay the money to make this all go away, even if I wanted to, which I don't, according to my aunt's disclosures of Jason's previous borrowing attempts, his overall debt is likely substantially larger than $400,000. Helping my brother is no longer the goal of this. It's about supporting a detrimental behavior pattern that must end. By the way, if you're still with me and this wild ride of a story has you hooked, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what happens next, or any of the other unbelievable true stories I'll be sharing. Next week I have an appointment with a financial advisor to go over all of my accounts and implement additional security measures, and to understand my alternatives in the event that the situation worsens. I'm also thinking of talking to a lawyer about the attempted fraud, not necessarily to file charges right away, but to know my options. If something important occurs, which is likely to happen shortly given the current state of affairs, I'll provide another update. I appreciate you letting me vent, and I want to thank everyone who commented on my previous post and shared similar experiences. Knowing that I'm not the only one coping with this type of dysfunction in my family is comforting. Second update. I made the decision to speak with Jason face-to-face following the attempted bank fraud I detailed in my previous update. The events that follow were startling, and yet completely expected. Jason's residence was my destination yesterday evening. It's a dilapidated establishment in a dubious area of the city. He was unshaven, had heavy circles under his eyes, and was wearing a tattered t-shirt when he eventually opened the door. His initial remarks, "You were patient enough to arrive. No apology for the bank account hack. No justification for the $400,000 debt. As usual, just pure entitlement." When I questioned him about the bank fraud, he gave me a disturbing response. "Mom and Dad said that if things became severe enough, you would give in. I was merely expediting the procedure," he said. He uttered it so nonchalantly, as if he were talking about the weather instead of confessing to a crime. At that point, I became aware of something troubling about his flat. There were several phones and what seemed to be credit card statements with various names on them on his coffee table. He swept them into a drawer before I could get a better look. My stomach fell when I understood that this might be more than simply my bank account. My parents arrived just as I was ready to depart. When I got there, Jason had apparently texted them. They stormed inside his residence, as if it were their own. Naturally, Mom was crying and Dad was enraged. This led to the most heated family argument we've ever experienced. Dad began by expressing their disappointment with my self-centered actions. Mom said that they had failed as parents because I had shown myself to be so heartless. The worst part is that they actually defended the bank fraud attempt when I brought it up. Mom said, "He was desperate when you declined to assist. What option did he have?" Dad continued, "People sometimes make mistakes when they're backed into a corner." What I was hearing was unbelievable. So if it involves family, is identity theft acceptable? I inquired. How did they react? No matter what, family helps family. I lost it at that point. Years of repressed annoyance were released. I explained to them how their blatant favoritism had impacted me and how Jason became the person he is today as a direct result of their enabling. I cited concrete examples, such as their refusal to assist me with my college tuition while paying for Jason's unsuccessful attempts, their repeated attempts to coerce me into giving him money, and their persistent manipulation of my emotions. What did Jason say? "At least I'm not a stuck-up B*****TCH who thinks she's better than everyone else." He grinned. In fact, Mom even gave a nod of approval. I came to the important realization that they would not change at that point. Never. Money was no longer the only factor in this. This concerned a family relationship that was essentially poisonous and would never get better. I pulled out my phone and listened to the full recording of our chat. Their faces went slack with shock when they realized I had proof that they were supporting bank fraud. This recording goes straight to the police if anything happens to my accounts again, I declared, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands, and I will file charges this time. Jason, for the first time, looked genuinely concerned. Mom began to complain that I was endangering them. My father referred to me as manipulating. Dad took hold of my arm as I was about to depart and said something I will never forget. Never expect to be welcomed in this family again if you walk out that door. I gave him a direct look and said, "That sounds more like a promise than a threat," before walking out. I had dozens of missed calls and messages when I came home. I blocked their phone numbers. Then, I opened my laptop and began sending an email to my entire extended family, including screenshots of their threatening messages, a transcript of the recorded discussion, and documentation of the bank fraud attempt. I will no longer serve as the family scapegoat. I'm tired of being controlled. I will no longer serve as Jason's personal ATM. Above all, I have finished maintaining their secrets. It's likely that this will be my final update. I have a hunch that everyone's situation is going to drastically change soon. I'm concentrating on defending myself right now, which includes researching security systems and speaking with a lawyer about possible restraining orders. Thank you to everyone who has been keeping an eye on this situation and lending support. Your remarks gave me the courage to advocate for myself today. Third update. Everything has changed since my last update, which was a month ago. I made the decision to no longer preserve the family's secrets after the altercation at Jason's place. When I finally revealed the truth, this is what transpired. Do you recall the email I said I was sending to the extended family? Well, I made the decision to take things a step further. I made a thorough social media post with screenshots of the attempted bank fraud, Jason's own admissions of guilt, and a recording of my parents justifying his behavior as proof. I only wanted the truth to be known. I wasn't attempting to get revenge. The reaction was tremendous. Other victims of Jason's schemes began to come forward within a few hours. According to my cousin Tim, Jason had taken out a $5,000 loan for an unfulfilled business venture. Aunt Beth said that he had persuaded her to co-sign a loan, which she is currently repaying. Even the mystery surrounding my grandmother's missing jewels from last Christmas had a likely suspect all of a sudden. However, Jason's ex-roommate made the most important disclosure when he revealed how Jason had used his identity to open many credit cards, being too ashamed to come forward. He believed that no one would take him seriously because of my parents' perfect son narrative. Someone at the business where Jason had just had an interview saw the social media post. His past involvement with financial fraud piqued their curiosity. It goes without saying that he was not hired. My parents' standing in their social group suffered greatly. They had supported their struggling son for years while presenting themselves as the ideal parents handling one ungrateful daughter. Everyone was aware of the reality now. After complaining to their church mates about my selfishness, those same people began to distance themselves from me all of a sudden. Dad's golf friends were too busy to play every week. Mom attempted to minimize the harm by accusing me of lying, but the facts were clear. They were unable to justify their own recorded comments, the text messages, or the bank records. Their carefully constructed image fell apart when Jason's current roommate viewed the post. It was the real game changer. When he consented to share his apartment, he was unaware of Jason's past. Jason received an eviction notice within a week. People don't want to live with someone who tries to commit bank fraud, it turns out. According to what I've been told, Jason now works 3 jobs to pay off his debt. He is finally being held accountable for his acts, and his credit has been damaged beyond repair. Surprisingly, my parents have stopped using social media. No more quotes about ungrateful kids or passive-aggressive posts about family values. Everyday life has never been better for me. That job promotion I applied for? I got it. I've been able to concentrate on my professional and personal development without the continual drain of family turmoil and money exploitation. What a concept! I'm finally meeting someone who respects and understands boundaries. Mom and Dad no longer discuss me at all, according to the few family members I still communicate with. No more guilt tripping. No more attempts at manipulation. At last, they've realized that sometimes social accountability is the result of acts having repercussions. To everyone who has to deal with toxic family members, sometimes letting the truth speak for itself is more effective than going to court. The wrong people will come out, and the right people will listen. Legal repercussions were not my family's biggest fear. Rather, it was the public discovering who they really were. By speaking up instead of keeping quiet, I not only freed myself from their control but also gave others the confidence to defend themselves. We appreciate everyone who has supported and followed this adventure. I feel really free for the first time in my life. It's acceptable when the family you were born into isn't the one you need. Now, I'm assembling my own network of people that respect integrity, accountability, and sincere concern for others. My last update will be this one. Now that the story is over, I'm prepared to begin a new chapter, free from guilt, deception, and the never-ending weight of providing for others. And what do you know? No lawsuit ever could make that feel better. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you had to choose between your own well-being and a toxic family dynamic? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I really want to know your stories.